a video on using up this stock that I made. So I made this stock, it's very nice, and then I clarified it and faffed around with it. And I don't just want to use it up as gravy, I actually want to use it as something. And I was thinking for quite a while that I wanted to try a Vietnamese pho. Pho? 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 I don't know. Anyway, that Vietnamese soupy stew with the noodles in and the meat and the aromatics and things. So I want to use the stock up, and it's also going to be another video on these bits of meat, because I'm curious about. Well, there's going to be another video, but these bits of meat where I kind of think the short ribs are a bit of a rip-off, and I think we can do better and use a bit of shin instead. And these are some bones from the supermarket, which I've got quite some meat on. And I want to do like a bit of a comparison type of thing. But I want to use up this stock. So it's nice stock. I'll certainly faff around with it lots and lots, and it seems like a good opportunity to use it up on something that's going to be delicious. Yes, that's a lovely stock. That's a lovely stock. That is just the a bit of a byproduct stock, which was the jelly from some rendering some fat down, and then I was just faffing around with it, adding some vegetables to it to kind of improve the flavour. It's alright, it's alright, but that stock's probably a little bit too flavoursome for the start of a pho, whereas if we mix them both together, that will water the flavour of that one down without kind of losing anything without adding water. So so it'll go a little bit further. So I'm not really prepared, am I? What I'm going to do is because I'm not going to make the stock from scratch, but I am going to cook the meat in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to brown off the meats, the short rib, the bones with the lots of meat on, and the shin. We're going to brown that off, and then I've got some ginger, and I've got some chili, and I've got some lemongrass. So, and we'll see what kind of herbs we've got in the cupboard. And we're going to cook the. I think I'll put the seeds in. We'll save the chili flesh for the finished dish, but we'll put the seeds in, and we'll put in some lemongrass, maybe just one lemongrass, into the stock when we're kind of cooking it, and then we'll brown off some of this ginger, not all of it, maybe just that bit. Cut it in half, fry that so it gets a bit of charred colour on it, and then we'll save that in case we want to use it we'll save that bit in case we want to use it in the finished dish. So I'll fry some stuff off, and then you can see what kind of char we've got on it, and then we'll slowly cook that in that stock, and then we will allow it to cool so we can handle it. We'll strip the meat off the bones, and then decide that we're going to use that meat back in the pho, and then we'll let it all go cool, and then we'll build a dish later, probably tomorrow, but you don't have to wait a day, it'll be instantaneous, and then we'll heat everything back up. And we've got some noodles, I've got some coriander, I've got some leek, I've also got some spring onion. I'm not a huge fan of the taste of raw onion, so I'm not going to put any raw onion in. I've got some carrot, so we'll put some thin strips of carrot in as well. I think that would be kind of quite nice, and we'll see whatever else we've got. Yes, I think so. So that's what we'll do. So I'll brown some things off, and then you'll be able to see how brown they are, and then we'll put them in the pan, and we'll do a slow simmer for 4 hours, something like that. Make sure everything's nice and tender, and then we'll take it from there. Right, so the meat has browned, as you can see, nice and browned all over. And then that can go in there. I've still got a bit more to do, but that's the first kind of batch. I'm not bothered about that little bit of blood. Any kind of impurities we're going to scoop out of it. And just got a bit more meat in. So that meat can go in, and then slightly off camera, ever prepared and all that. I just need to cut this ginger in half, so it's got a larger surface area. Like that. We'll fry that off as well and give it a bit of colour. So those bones, so tongs are here, so these bones want to go in, and then bring it up to the, once everything else, no, I can put it on now actually, I can slowly track them up to a simmer, so Heat on, bones in. Like that. And by the time those are fried off, then what we call it, the bones will stock will come up to temperature. So that's that. And then what we're going to do with, it's all off camera, isn't it? Of course. So a bit of one of these. Oh, got what it's called. We'll just in half, and then we'll just give it a bit of a bash. Lemongrass. That's what it's called. So 1 stick of lemongrass can go in there, and then end off the chilli, and I'll put the seeds in one at a time. All very interesting, this isn't it? You can't see what I'm doing, but let's just put the seeds in, because I want the spiciness of the chilli, but I don't want the heat from the seeds in the finished kind of dish. I'm not a huge fan of seeds, but if we put those seeds in there, we'll get a nice bit of heat into everything in there, and then it won't be as intense when we finish the soup. So those I'll slice and we'll put in a bit of a garnish at the end. That's the tongs again, so that over, and then we'll just use a bit of that stock in there just to deglaze this pan. Those bits of fat don't want to go in. So we'll just use some of that stock in the pan just to kind of deglaze it, but we want to get a bit of colour on there, just to char it a little bit, so then there's going to be a little bit more depth of flavour. So yeah, you know what I'm doing. So up to the boil, skim off any kind of impurities that kind of come to the top, keep an eye on it, cook it for about 4 hours. All the flavour from the bones and the meat are going to go into the stock, and then we'll be able to build the dish tomorrow. Although it's still a lot of stock, I'm going to be eating fur all over the weekend, which is not what I wanted, because I've got some other things I wanted to plan to eat at the weekend. Anyway, so those are charring nicely, but you'll see I'm not going to cook them smaller. I'm going to leave them kind of quite whole, and because it's going to be in there for 4 hours, so there's no point cutting them smaller. They might as well stay larger and then release their flavour for longer. And we'll give them a taste afterwards. So when we've made all that, we'll pull out the ginger and we'll give it a taste and see what it tastes like, because it might be nice to cut back up and put into the stocky soupy thing. But I did have some thoughts as well. About this. But I can I normally do things 2 or 3 times to kind of get down what exactly how I want to do it. Oh, that's okay. So that can go in now. A little bit of meat can go in, and then slightly worried they're going to char a little bit too much. So they're just going to end up burning. Let's stick those in. And let's take a ladle full of stock. See, because I've just been talking for too long. And that's off. Just a couple of ladles full of stock in there to get all the goodness off the bottom of that pan. We'll leave that ladle. And then just a little pastry brush just to pick up all those bits of goodness. Some fat's there's going to be some fat from this that's going to go into the pot, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to skim that off anyway, and we're going to strain it as well. I think we'll probably end up straining it to a cloth just to get like a better finish on the soupy stock. So that in there, and it's also practically cleaned the pan as well, so that's good, isn't it? So that in there like that, up to the boil, then a really, really, really slow simmer with a lid partially on. There's the lid. So we'll probably have the lid on at a jaunty angle like that, so some liquid can escape, but it's not going to stew, and it's not going to stew the meat, and it's not going to make the stock go cloudy, because that's what happens if you put a lid on things. Everything wants to stew and go cloudy, which is fine if you're making a stew, but we're not. We kind of want something that's a little bit refined. So I'm going to throw in some a bit of star anise, so that's about half a star anise, and then we'll throw in a cinnamon stick, and we're going to throw in some coriander seeds. That many. Not going to bother toasting them, they'll be fine. And I'm just going to put in the spice box. Yeah, that's all I've got. That'll be fine. That'll be enough. Right, so things are looking tender. So let's just pull a bit out. Been on for about 4 hours. It might be that tender that it's all falling to bits. Yeah, that's nice and tender. That's nice and tender. So let's let it cool for a little bit, and then we'll pick things out. I haven't bothered skimming it. It'll be easier to skim things when it comes out. That ginger's not tender, is it? That's interesting. I would have thought that ginger would become tender. So it looks like, it smells wonderful, but it looks like the meat's come away from the bone on the Jacob's ladder. I don't want to. Is it? Yeah, it's come away. So I'll have to fish out that bone. That looks nice and tender. So that's certainly going to go back in there. So I might have to just, if the meat's come away from some of the bones, we'll just have to kind of figure out what belongs to what. But that shouldn't be too difficult. That shouldn't be too difficult. So, yeah, I'll let it cool and it'll just be a little bit easier to handle. And there's always a danger when you pull things out of hot liquid that it dries out a little bit through evaporation. So it's like hot, and the steam coming off it is actually moisture that you're losing out of the meat. So it'd be better if it's just a little bit cooler when we pull the meat out, and then we'll have a look at it. But taste-wise, just get through that layer of fat on the top. It's really tasty, actually. It's really tasty. It's really fragrant. I think it's certainly going to need some lime in it, just to kind of compensate for that richness of the stock. So I'll have to buy some limes when we do it tomorrow. And we'll see. I think it's one of those things that you add anything that you want, that you've got laying around the house, anything kind of like fragrant and kind of like vegetable-y and a bit crunchy and a bit meaty. I don't think there's any kind of set recipe, but we're going to see when we get there. Right, so cooled enough that we can pull things out relatively easily. As you can see, these short ribs, the meat has just fallen off the bone. They'll be nice and tender. I think there's probably too much meat for that amount of stock. Maybe not, actually. Maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. But it's reduced quite a bit. So let's just taste it. If it's a little intense, what we can do is we can water it down, or we can add a little bit more stock to it. No, it's good. That's good. So, what I'm going to do, it's got some, can we see? It's got some bits in it. So, blood and impurities have come out of that meat, and it's got all those bits in that we can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that liquid carefully through a cloth, just to pick out any bits of what we call it, of those bits, because we don't want them in. We want a nice clear stock. And I'm going to cool it down overnight, and then what we'll do, any fat left on the top will set solid, and we can just pick that off a lot easier than skimming it, because there's always a danger when we're skimming that we'll lose more stock than that we want to put in the soup. Also, there's the coriander seeds in there and the herbs and things, so they can need to come out. So I'll pull the meat off the bones, and then we'll kind of see what we've kind of got. But I think, do you know, if I'm really honest, we need to taste the ginger as well, don't we? If I'm really honest, I think the short ribs waste of time. I think these bones with that amount of meat on is great. And do you know, They were labelled bones. They're labelled bones, right? But those are spare ribs, are those? Those are beef spare ribs. So, and they're a pound piece. No, like 80 pence each? No, 90 pence each. Yes, 90 pence each. That's not bad, that. That's not bad, that. A couple of those for a portion. You do really well. You just need to go through the packets of bones to kind of pull out the ones that have got more meat on than ever. But if I'm honest, I think I'd have used those rather than the what are they called? I keep forgetting. Short ribs. I think those are better, and then I kind of think even better, more value as well. I think the shin. But I'll weigh those. Well, I'll weigh those. But yeah, so I'll strip the meat off the bones and kind of like pull off any excess bits of fat, and then that'll be going back into the soupy stew. So, what's the ginger taste like? It's still hard as a ginger. It should have given up its flavour. No, it's edible. It's edible. I think what I'd do if I did it again, I think I'd just use a ginger skin. I don't think I'd char it. I think I'd peel the ginger, or use less of it and chop it up fine, or kind of add the ginger back into the stock later, but just use the skin to kind of flavour the stock as I was cooking the stock, and then keep the ginger back, and then either quickly cook it or put it into the finished dish like raw, and then you get that ginger punch. I think that'd be really kind of quite nice. I certainly think putting the chili seeds in was a good idea. And how's the lemongrass tasting? I'm gonna chew on a bit of lemongrass. Yeah, lemongrass has lost all its flavour, so that was good. That was good call. So, filter that through a cloth. I forgot a cloth. It doesn't need to be anything special. It just needs to be a bit of clean. It can be all my cloths are stained because I'm forever straining things through them. But just a clean bit of cotton that hasn't been. You like wash it, but then make sure you rinse out all this kind of soap, so it's got like no soap residual. So just strain that through a nice bit of cloth, so it's nice and clear, and then we'll strip the meat off the bones, and then we'll put the dish together tomorrow when I'm ready to eat it. But if we look at these, so these have got these bits of fat and connective tissue underneath. We just want the meat, so it's just a case of stripping that off, and then we're going through these, and there's like that bit of membrane that can pull off. Pull that membrane off and just get back to the meat. But anyway, that's something I can do off camera. You don't need to see that. A bit boring, eh? Right, let's have a go at putting this together. So the stock is hot. I have seasoned it with, I forgot to buy limes. I've seasoned it with soy sauce, salt, and some Lea & Perrins, because I haven't got any fish sauce. So Lea & Perrins is a fish-based sauce. And then I put in, because I forgot to buy some limes, I used some of my homemade red wine vinegar to season it. It's very nice. I have cooked the instant noodles in some of the stock, and they're cooked, and then I've shredded up some leek and some carrot and cooked that, and that's just going in there as well. And then we've got some the short rib, so some of that, and then I've got the egg goes on last, so I want coriander in, and I've done the coriander stalks as well, so I didn't put the coriander stalks in the stock, but I've chopped them up and put those in there because we're not going to waste them. And then we've got some spring onions, because I don't like raw onions, but spring onions go okay. Did put some chili in, and then we've got a little bit of chili like that, and then spoon extremely hot stock. I'm not going to put any raw. Normally put in some really thinly sliced beef skirt or something similar, but I don't want to do that. So that on, and then I've soft boiled an egg. Hopefully they're still way. Those are for seconds. I did have a knife. Yes. So, and then soft boiled an egg. So hopefully they'll still be soft on the inside. Oh yes, look at that. Look at that. There we go. A bit more stock, I think. And we'll give it a taste and see what we think. I've got any chopsticks. So, spoon on a fork. It is. Oh, I should take a picture. I'll take a picture. First, let's give it a taste. I mean, it's all down to the stock, isn't it? I mean, a bad stock is not going to make a very good dish. That's really good. That's really good. Nice and light and fragrant. Meat's super tender. It's really good. It's a bit of a faff if you're going to be making your own stock, but that's delicious. It's lovely and light. I mean, it's not something you kind of want in the winter time. I'd like something a little bit thicker in the winter time, but in the summertime, that's lovely. And certainly if you've got some leftover meat, certainly a good way to use it up. I mean, there you go. That was lovely, isn't it? Bit of a faff, but a success.